The whistleblower complaint is online. You can read it yourself. It's about 9 pages and comes from a member of the intelligence community. What's in those 9 pages is being picked apart, and rightly so. The allegations are against a sitting president, accusing President Trump of using the office to have the Ukrainian government investigate Joe Biden to influence next year's election. Are the allegations true? That's a question being answered in the most partisan way.
It's hard to imagine a more serious set of allegations than those contained in the complaint.
For most Democrats, the whistleblower complaint involves national security and the integrity of the U.S.'s elections. For most Republicans, the complaint is political fiction. Louisiana Congressman Steve Scalise tweeted today, "Dems are literally making stuff up now because they have no legitimate reason to impeach Donald Trump." In a separate tweet, Scalise highlighted one part of the complaint in which the whistleblower stated, quote, "I was not a direct witness of the events described." The whistleblower said he or she received information from, quote, "multiple U.S. government officials that the president was trying to solicit interference in the election." Is the complaint fact or a farce? That requires investigation. Here's the acting director of national intelligence describing the inspector general passing on the complaint to him.
Because he found the allegations to be credible, I was required under the Intelligence Community Whistleblower Protection Act to forward the complaint to our oversight committees within 7 days of receiving it.
The inspector general found the allegations to be credible, something that's being debated. But both sides agree what's happening now is unprecedented. Tan Trung, Eyewitness News.
The president says he may release records of all contacts between his administration and Ukraine to prove, in his words, he's done nothing wrong.